Storytelling, at a minimum, needs at least three things. You need your storyteller. Good news, we have 4 of them tonight. Check. You need your story. We have 4 of those tonight. Check. And you need the audience. Thank you very much for being here to connect through story, and you can applaud yourselves. Thank you very much. I also want to say thank you to the ASU Kerr Cultural Center for creating this space to share stories and for us to connect through story. The other thing about gather storytelling that makes it just a little bit different, there's a structure tonight. But before we get to that, some housekeeping. 1, hi, Mom. Very good, very good, very good. All right. 2, this is the point where I remind you, please silence the cell phones. Very considerate group. But speaking of cell phones, feel free to record, feel free to take photos, but no flash. Got enough light in my eyes. And if you feel so inclined to take photos and record, feel free to tag on Instagram, ASU Kerr Live, at ASU KERR Live. All right, what makes gather storytelling a little bit different? It's the structure. So 1, you are going to get to hear a traditional story. We have 3 true personal stories told by 3 fabulous storytellers. And then there's a question and answer section in which you will have the opportunity to ask any of the storytellers questions, or maybe you just have a comment. Feel free to comment. But before we can get to that, before the question and answer, before the 3 fabulous personal stories, and before the traditional story, I have to announce the theme. Are you ready for it? Okay. The theme, truth or spare. Truth or spare. What does that mean to you when you first hear that? Yeah. When I think about it, sometimes stories just aren't factual. If you go out on the street and you just keep going down, if you go down far enough, I'm not sure how far, but eventually you'll get there. You're going to find 3 men. One of the first man, one of the men, the first one, he's blind. He has no sight. The second, he has no legs. And the third man, he has no hands. But that first man's going to say, I saw that rabbit. The second's going to say, I ran after that rabbit and caught it. And the third says, let me pick it up and put it in my pocket. Some stories just aren't factual. But a story doesn't need to be factual to be true or to have truth. Because when you go down that road and you pass those 3 men, and if you keep going far enough, you're going to run into a pond, a round pond surrounded by reed grass, green and yellow grass, and right in that middle of that pond, it's going to have a stone that sits just a couple inches above the water and just big enough for a turtle. That turtle is going to be sitting on that stone with his neck extended in his arms, and he's just going to be enjoying that sun until he hears. You know what I haven't had in a while? Some turtle soup. Yeah, 2 hunters walking around that pond. That is a great idea. It's a little late, but tomorrow morning we're going hunting for turtles so we can make turtle soup. Well, that turtle opened his eyes and he looked, he saw on one end of the pond, he saw his 2 friends, the cranes, and he slowly, but as fast as he could, crawled off of that stone and hopped in the water and swam to those 2 cranes, and he said, cranes, cranes, my dear friends, will you help me? I don't want to be turtle soup. And he told him what those hunters said, and the crane said, of course, dear friend, we will help you. And the turtle said, I have an idea. You will take this stick, each of you will grab that stick, I will bite that stick in the middle, and you will carry me off to safety. The crane said, what a clever idea, Mr. Turtle. We will do that. He said, great, the next morning I will come with the stick. The next morning came, he was there with his stick. The crane took that stick on either end. Turtle bit onto that stick and flew him out of that pond. But wouldn't you know, there were 5 kids at that edge of that pond and said, look at those clever birds. They found a way to carry that turtle, and that turtle said, wait, it was my idea, and he fell back down to the pond. Turtle soup. I think we can all agree there's truth. I'm not sure if factually there was a turtle, but there's truth, and sometimes it's best just to keep your big mouth shut. Speaking of keeping your big mouth shut, our traditional story this tonight, and you may know how this one starts. Once upon a time, thank you. Once upon a time, there lived a king. And this king, he lived in a castle, a gray stone castle nestled in mossy green fields high up on a mountaintop that overlooked that ocean. And if you walked into this castle, you'd be greeted with big, large, open rooms, and you would see the walls illuminated by the flame of the sconces on the wall. And if you kept going down a corridor, you would meet the king's private corridors. Just as big, but decorated with earth-tone tapestries. And along one of the walls, a long, dark brown wooden rectangular table. And right above that long wooden table was an equally long window that spanned the entire width of that wall and overlooked the ocean. And this is where the king would do his business. The king himself, though, he was average height. He wore the royal garb of deep reds and deep golds. And he had long auburn hair. The hair went right down to his shoulders. And on top of that auburn hair, infused with brown and red, he wore a yellow gold crown with 4 green jewels. But underneath that crown and underneath that auburn hair, the king, he had the ears of a donkey, big hairy donkey ears. And now I think you can understand why that king wore his hair long. And when you have long hair, you don't get a haircut but once a year. But when you have the ears of a donkey, getting a haircut once a year is a stressful time. So when haircut time would come, the king, he would be sitting in his private corridors and he would summon his guards. Guards, bring me a barber. And the guards would do just that. They would go down to the town square and they would make the declaration. Your Majesty requires the service of a barber. 12 gold coins. 12 gold coins. 12 gold coins. 12 gold coins. The crowd would murmur, 12 gold coins. That was a lot of money back then. People were tripping over to volunteer to cut the king's hair. But it didn't last all that long. The guards would bring the volunteer and he would bring the barber to the king's private corridors, and Your Majesty, we've brought the barber. Very well, bring him in. The barber would take his stance, his position behind the king, and the king would remove his crown and set it on that table. And he would get to work. Comb, cut. Comb, cut. Comb, cut. Your Majesty, what big ears you have. All the better to hear you with, barber. Are you nearly done? Just 2 more cuts, sir. Comb, cut. Comb, cut. We're all done, Your Majesty. Very well. Collect your payment from the guards in the hall. And that's what the barber would do. He would collect his things. He would go to the hall. He would see the guards, and he would collect his payment. And those guards would enter the king's corridors. And the king would say, he would give the order, do the deed. Dead. But the king, he wasn't completely cruel. Yes, the barber died, but he would make sure those 12 gold coins made it to that barber's family. And this would go on and on and on until no one would want to volunteer. But wouldn't you know it, one year, bring me a barber. And the guards did just that. They started in their town, that town square, and they said, Your Majesty requires a barber, 12 gold coins. But wouldn't you know it, Just earlier that week, a brand new barber moved into town and he heard 12 gold coins. I can cut the hair of the king for 12 gold coins. So the guards took that barber straight to the king's corridors. Your Majesty, we brought the barber. Very well, send him in, and the barber stood behind the king and he started his work. Comb, cut, comb, cut, comb, cut, comb, cut. Are you nearly done, barber? Just one more cut, Your Majesty. Comb, cut. We're all done, Your Majesty. Very well. Go collect your payment from the guards in the hall, and the barber did just that. But barber, before you leave, you do not utter to anyone with ears or a tongue what you saw here today. And the barber left, collected his payment, and the guards came in expecting the typical order. But the king, bring him back next year. Ugh. The king felt elated. He now had a barber that he could trust, that he would know would be here next year. He was so elated. I want to have a ball. He directed his guards, let's have a ball. I want music. I want the entire kingdom. And I want food. And most importantly, I want my music. So the guards just did that. They started planning for the ball. But that barber, oh, he went home and he got that pit in his stomach that just got heavier and heavier, and he began to fall sick. But the barber, he lived with Mom, and who Mom was curious and, of course, concerned for him. Tell me what's wrong, son. Let me help you. I can't tell you, Mom. I don't know, but I can't tell you. I'm not sure. Well, the color began to fade from his skin, and the next day he was still sick. So concerned Mom brought the doctor, and the doctor, tell me, son, what's wrong? Let me help you. I think I know, but I don't know. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Well, if you can't tell me, said the doctor, here's what you can do. You're going to go outside of town. You're going to walk down the road. You're going to go into the forest. You're going to find a tree, and you're going to tell that tree what you can't tell me. What did he have to lose? The barber summoned his strength, got dressed, and crawled himself out of the house and started walking. He walked down that road. He walked into that forest, and he walked down another road, and he found a road where it diverged, and he found a nice-looking tree. There was a hole in that tree, and he whispered, "The king has donkey ears. The king has donkey ears. The king has donkey ears." And just like that, the color came back to his flesh, and that pit was gone. He felt great. He turned around and started just walking home. But wouldn't you know it, that tree grew 3 new branches. Meanwhile, guards are planning a ball. The musicians are practicing. Those pipers are piping the king's favorite song to practice. And wouldn't you know, while those pipers were practicing, one broke a pipe. We need to go into the woods and find a new branch to make a pipe. Great idea. So what did those pipers do? They went out of the town, down the road, and straight into the forest, down another road, right where the road diverged, and found a nice-looking branch. Piper sawed off one of those branches, tried to play it, but no music came out. Tried to play it. The king has donkey ears. The king has donkey ears. The king has donkey ears. This is the coolest sound I have ever heard. I cannot wait to play it at tonight's ball. The king is going to love this. And that night, that castle was filled with energy. People were eating. There was music. Everyone was enjoying themselves. All of the king's favorite songs were played. But right before that ball ended, the king looked at those pipers and said, "Play me something new." Yeah, the pipers knew exactly what they were going to do. They pulled out that pipe. The king has donkey ears, the king has donkey ears, the king has donkey ears. Everyone started murmuring, the king has donkey ears. The king heard this, he threw back his crown. His hair went behind his ears, and everyone saw those big, hairy donkey ears. Within seconds, that room was cleared, and the king, bring me the barber. And the knights did just that. The guards did just that. They brought the barber. You barber, you told what you saw. And the king gave the order. The guards grabbed the barber on either side, started pulling him out of the room, and the barber said, Your Majesty, I promise I didn't tell anyone. And he said, well, how did everyone know? Your Majesty, fine, I will tell you. I was sick, the doctor told me. I went to the forest, I told a tree. I found a tree and I whispered into the hole into the tree, and technically you told me not to tell anyone with ears or a tongue. Now the king, he was at least a man of his word. Very well, barber. And he let him go. To this day, I can't tell you what happened to that barber or that king, but I can tell you, that barber never cut that king's hair again. Thank you. Should we start hearing some personal stories? We have 3 fabulous and well-accomplished storytellers, and our first, Parul Agrawal. Now, there's some things you should know about Parul. She is an author. She is an engineer by education. She is an entrepreneur by passion. She is an international best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, and book publishing consultant. She was even named one of the 30 changemakers of India in 2018. Give it up for Parul.
Thank you, Bryce. That was a lovely feeling. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for coming here tonight. I grew up in a small town in India. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business, and the neighborhood aunties could possibly write a best-selling gossip column. Growing up in a joint family with cousins, siblings, parents, grandparents, and house guests who were not ready to leave the house, chaos was a constant factor, and there was never, ever a dull moment. If the kids were not playing around as though they were competing for Olympics, the elderly member of the family were engaged in deep discussions on how to best pickle the mangoes. Love, laughter, and just the right amount of family drama were the daily items in the menu list. But this small town girl had dreams of the big city. So I landed up in Bombay, the Bollywood city of the world, the city that gives its songs and music and dance to the world, to pursue my undergrad degree in engineering. However, life suddenly hit the gas pedal after I graduated. I was swept into a whirlwind of arranged marriage. And when I say whirlwind, I truly mean it. I went from, hi, how are you, nice to meet you, to I do in just 7 days. Think about it. It's less than the time Amazon takes to deliver a product from another country. And here I was, all packaged in my bridal outfit and ready to be sent to United States of America with my new husband. But when the universe and your parents decide, you just go with the flow. It was truly a crash course in learning someone who was just a stranger 7 days back. Talk about hitting the fast forward button on relationship timeline. It's been 20 years to my marriage, and I'm still not sure if I was crazy or brave to take that decision. But here I was in Arizona with my husband. He went back to work, and I started pursuing my grad degree from Arizona State University. My alma mater. Thank you. Few months into our wedding, into our newly married life, we decided to go back to India for a vacation. I was truly excited to meet my friends, family members, and most importantly, try all the delicacies that I had been missing for over a year. The welcome back home was as warm and as cozy as a blanket. And there was enough food to feed a small army. And then started coming the compliments. Oh, the compliments. Every friend, family member, relative, neighbor that I met greeted me with the same compliment. You look so happy. Your husband must be so loving. Initially, I was on cloud 9. Oh my gosh, my happiness is truly radiating off me. But as the days went by and the compliments didn't change, I started doubting something. Why is everybody saying the same thing? I mean, I was happy. I was living my dream life in US, but was my happiness so obvious? Or did I all of a sudden got some glow in the dark aura in sunny Arizona that everybody was able to see except for me? And then in a moment of clarity, or let's just say hilarity, I realized they were perhaps not complimenting me on my happiness, but in a subtle way saying that I might have expanded a bit. You see, in my culture, we have mastered the art of saying truth wrapped in sugary sweetness. So instead of saying, hey, you look fat, they would say, hey, you look happy. Translation, you might want to consider the gym membership, young lady. And just like you all, I burst into laughter at this realization. I was trying to decode all these compliments. It was like I was working in a spy movie and decoding everything. So next time a friend or family member would invite me to their house for lunch or dinner, and they would say, you look happy, my ears would hear, you might want to count your calories and lay off those laddus and samosas and naans and butter chicken that we so lovingly prepared for you. But honestly, I didn't mind it. That's how we show love in my small town. You know, why be brutal when you can be charmingly indirect? But this way of saying things in a roundabout, subtle way, knowingly or unknowingly, became a part of my life. It's funny how these cultural habits grow on us, even though we think that we have outgrown them. Few years down the line, I started helping authors write and publish their books. A job that is truly rewarding, but comes with its own set of challenges. Trust me, it requires a huge amount of patience when you're reading a manuscript and you want to be polite, but your heart wants to scream, this is utter rubbish. But my upbringing wouldn't let me be. I could literally hear my mother's voice in my ears. Words have power. Do not say anything that would hurt somebody's feelings. Just let it go. So instead of telling the author that their work is not exactly a Booker Prize winner, I would say things like, I can see the potential here. I can see your hard work here. Translation, this requires a lot of work, but I don't want to be the one to crush your dreams. But this kind of approach started to wear me out. You see, I was no longer that small town girl. I was also living in United States of America, the land of free speech. Here we wear our honesty as a badge of honor. And being open and direct, it's not just encouraged, it's a way of our living. And I was also born in India, the land that gave the world its yoga and spirituality. And isn't spirituality all about being authentic and truthful? So what was holding me back? I was split between two worlds, a world that taught me honesty and the other world that taught me to be kind. It was like I was balancing on a tightrope between diplomacy and bluntness. And trust me, that tightrope was pretty wobbly. Every manuscript I critiqued, every author that crossed my path, I found myself at that crossroads. I could see the passion, the hard work, the soul that they had put into their work, and so I wanted to be compassionate, yet I wanted to be honest and tell them that they need improvement. And by being dishonest, was I really helping them or setting up for future failure? I was really torn between the values I was brought up with and the principles that now so imbibe. It was like my throat chakra, the energy center of communication, was blocked. I wanted to scream, I wanted to tell the truth, but my heart was gasping for air. I firmly believe that the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. And so slowly and steadily, this midway approach crept in other aspects of my life. For example, if I had to be in a situation of confrontation, I always held myself back. And every time I held myself back, I felt more and more disconnected with my true inner self. As I was delving in this dance, something wonderful happened with me. I became a mother. And motherhood taught me that there is a way to be truthful, but not hurtful. There is a way to provide constructive feedback and yet be compassionate. Because that is how I would want my kids to be. And I obviously cannot preach what I don't follow. It's a dance that I'm still learning. But if I can survive an arranged marriage in 7 days, I can surely learn this too, right? So now, anytime I find myself in such a situation, I take a deep breath. I channel my inner yogi, and I find that sweet spot where my throat chakra is open and my heart chakra is still shining. Because honestly, it's all about finding the balance in this manuscript called life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that story. Question for you.
Yes, sir.
You shared hello to Mary in 7 days.
Yes, I did.
Is there any constructive feedback?
Oh. You know, I never had time to think about it when I was getting married. You wouldn't even believe I didn't even have a passport or a visa. So everything, it was not just wedding, I also had to apply for a passport and visa within those 7 days. So I had no time to really think about it. But thinking back, I think marriage is a gamble, right? Whether you know the person for 7 days or 7 years. So at least if you follow your parents' advice, and if something goes bad, you can always go back to them and blame them, right? Rather than blaming yourself. So always follow the parents. You're always in a safe spot.
Thank you very much. Your humor is delightful. Thank you very much for sharing. We are ready for our second storyteller. I'm being given a look. Mr. Christopher Owens. Some things you need to know about Christopher. He is an award-winning writer, spoken word artist, an MC, a motivational speaker, and founder CEO of Culture Phoenix, a nationally acclaimed organization that creates and curates events, initiatives to empower Black and other underserved communities. I'm not done. Chris's latest venture, Culture Hub, an intentionally designed, culturally safe co-working environment for entrepreneurs and creatives of color that's welcoming to everyone. Another thing about Chris. His activist work has included using the spoken word to rally for causes, including reproductive freedom and Martin Luther King March for Voting Rights. Can I get a round for Chris?
Good evening. All right, I don't have a lot of time, so poem and story. Bumblebees by nature are not supposed to fly. They are aerodynamically faulty and aren't supposed to get off the ground. This has been scientifically proven. Thank God nobody explained this to the damn bumblebee. See, ignorance can be bliss if you use it to allow blissful things to occur. So don't tell her what she can't be just because you have some fear of flying. Don't tell him he's some dog with an invisible fence who's defenseless, whose extent can't go beyond the ghetto he came from. See, most people don't realize that the only things holding them back are the lies that they feed them or the false narratives they believe in themselves. It's funny how this thing work out. I don't understand how you're gonna give somebody advice for a roadmap you're not meant to go down. Funny how folk talk down your dreams like you're supposed to be average, like them. See, I like when people tell me what they think I can't do. Their bull becomes bullets to blow holes in their whole theory. Clearly they don't know who I am. Child of a king, which means I was chosen before they decided to throw stones at my throne. Go home, get your house in order. Clean out your closet before you try to offer somebody garage sale advice. See, everything that's been done in life had to be done by somebody first. So the only thing worse than not having any courage is having the nerve to serve discouraging words on the plate of someone else's purpose. How are you gonna throw salt on somebody who's already seasoned with promise? Most folks don't realize they can't shine simply because they are not polished. See, you're not promised tomorrow. But instead of trying to slam dunk, most of us would rather fade away and put our dreams on layaway because they don't have the strength to go through the pain of the down payment, have no faith to sustain them, can't see their dreams and therefore don't claim them, can only see what's in front of them. If we all thought like that, Stevie Wonder can never see ribbons in the sky. So I will take my mustard seeds of faith and keep on walking and keep on talking because somebody in those seats needs to believe in themselves and I'll gladly be their representative. So every line that I write, every rhyme that I spit, everything from this moment forward is for I and the people because believing in you is all you gotta do to learn how to fly. Today, and I just realized this a few hours ago, today is the 61st anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Today marks 6 decades and a year that a preacher from Atlanta, Georgia was able to speak and share clearly what his vision was for America, calling out what had happened and still having an ideal for something more beautiful. I tell you that because I want to share with you a story about the day that changed my life. April 20th, 2010 in Louisville, Kentucky. Now before we get to that date, let's go back to my birthday, December 28th, 1979, Saginaw, Michigan. I come from a city that you may know of as the birthplace of Stevie Wonder, Draymond Green, Serena Williams, or poet Theodore Redke, who won the Pulitzer for poetry back in the day. What I know it as is 4th and Ansley, the east side of Saginaw, 3rd generation future engineer, because that's what I was told. I was always the kid that was good in math and science, the honors courses. We had our student numbers, and mine was 107881. And everyone knew that my number was 107881 because when they did the grades in order, they did it by student number, and I was always at the top. Naturally, math and science are my strong suits, so I was always told by those. I was never asked. I was told by people, oh, you're great in math and science. You'll be an engineer. Do you know how much money they make? That's a 6-figure job. Your grandfather is already at the plant. Your father is as well. It makes sense for you to go into this. I was told this so much, somewhere down the line, I forgot to ask myself what I wanted to do. So when people ask me, naturally, I'd say, hey, yeah, I'm going to be an engineer. That's what mom and dad told me. Sounds good. I'll do that. Mechanical engineers, they make 125. Okay, that's what I'll be. Didn't ask myself if I liked it. It's just something I'm good at. So why not move forward with it? And every day, things kept going along. And sure enough, graduation day hits, and here I am, double major in mechanical engineering and physics, going to Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And about 5 months into school, I realized that I made a mistake. I didn't like engineering. Not that I couldn't do it, not that I wasn't capable, I just could not foresee myself spending 40 years of my life, 8 hours a day at a desk doing AutoCAD. Just was not really my bag. So while in school, I was introduced to spoken word poetry. I had a poet by the name of Phil the Poet. You know, poets have to have, smart, cool names, and he was called Phil the Poet because when he speaks, he wants to perform, and he's so deep, you have to Phil the Poet. Obviously, I didn't go along that line with the names, but I decided that this is something I could really, really move in. And I love the fact that I actually had something that I had not had for nearly 2 decades in my life. My own voice. Fast forward to 2003, March 15th. It was a Saturday, I believe. And while at Kentucky State University, I was in Louisville, Kentucky for an event. And after the event, I asked a simple question, hey, does anybody know if there's an open mic in town tonight? Find this place called Expressions of You on 18th and Ali on the west end of Louisville. Little did I know that that would be the beginning to the trajectory that launched me in a career that allowed me to perform in front of tens of thousands of people, write national commercials, and even write pitches for companies that were on Shark Tank that were successful. All I knew is I was going to an open mic and I wanted to perform. Throughout time, everyone's asking me, hey, so where are you working at? What you doing? Well, I was in school for this, but now I'm writing and I'm doing, oh, so you're not an engineer anymore? No, oh man, you know what? It was cool, but your thing is poetry now. All right, so what's your real job? These are the same people who throughout my life would raise me and lift me up to tell me I could do whatever it is that I wanted to do. Yet here I am in the moment actually finding the time to believe in myself. And those who were closest to me failed to grasp the ideal of something that wasn't secure or safe. See, in Saginaw, Michigan, at the time that I graduated, the poverty rate was 63%. When you have a scarcity mindset, certain things you can't take for granted, like your next meal, or having a night where you could go to sleep and not hear police sirens, or having a future outside of the neighborhood that you live in. So when I told my mother that I was thinking about doing poetry, imagine my shock when she said, sure, baby, you can do whatever you want to. Which leads us to April 20th, 2010. Now, by this time, I had been working at AT&T, formerly known as Bell South, for about 3 years. I had a temporary contract with a 3-year job. You work it, 30 days off, you come back full-time, ta-da. While I'm here, we had to go through 6 months of training. My trainee asked me to perform a poem at the end of the first week. As a result of doing the poem, I am then asked for the following 6 weeks to perform a poem on Fridays, and by the second month, it became a daily habit. I was known for my sales as much as I was for my poetry by the time I hit the floor taking calls. Random, if you happen to live in the Southeast area with AT&T and you had a combined phone bill with your cell phone and your internet, you might have had a chance to talk to me. And if I save you some money, you're welcome. At this time, it was an evening that I remember very clearly because I was sitting at home. I had been traveling throughout the region. I've done a couple poetry slams. I won both of them. And I had reached a point where performing poetry was making as much money as as working at AT&T. So even with that, it wasn't enough for me to move forward. And so as I sat, I looked up to God. I have a tendency of talking to him like he's my bigger brother. Hey, G, what's up? It's Chris. I need you to help me out with a situation here. Like, I understand that this is what I'm doing, but I've always been told that this is what I need to do, but this is working out for me, and I like this, but I really don't see this being my life. So can you give me like a burning bush or something? Can you make something just blatantly obvious where I can't run from it, and I have to say, you know what? That's exactly what I need to do. Can you please do that for me? Can you hook a brother up with this favor, please? And I left it at that. At 12:21 p.m. the next day, I was let go from my job. And I was never happier. Seriously, have you ever had a situation where you had to calm your boss down for firing you? Imagine a red-faced manager being consoled by the person she just fired as I tell her, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Don't worry about it. Now, the cool thing about this is it wasn't until after the fact that I realized what the issue had been and what made the day so great that changed my life forever. It was the first time that I had told the truth to myself. And many times we have people that give us the worst advice with the best of intentions because they love us. But only you know what you have inside of yourself. And at times, even we don't know that. And if I'm honest with myself, I knew before I even asked that this is the path that I needed to go on. But even with that, I still had the fear that I had to ask God to show me, hopefully as an out that this may have been one of those evenings he wasn't listening, to give me permission to move forward. Little did I know what believing in myself could be. Granted, as I mentioned before, poetry allowed me to perform in places in front of tens of thousands, whether it be at WNBA games or at Barclays Center, Alvin Ailey Theater, Ford Theater, writing commercials for BET, MTV, PBS, VH1. And so I started asking myself after a while, well, what else can I do? What other dreams could I follow if I had the audacity to believe in myself? So the next thing came up, wait, why not, you support women's sports, why not buy 7,000 WNBA tickets? Let's just see what happens. Granted, got information from that. USA Today wrote a national article on it. Poet buys 7,000 tickets. Once again, poetry is putting me in the places I never even imagined. Having had the opportunity to perform in other places, I wanted to make sure that I had those windows for others. So I made opportunities for others to open. Once that happened, I asked myself again, what else can I do? What else can I do? Next thing I do is open a business. And the business was able to be open as a result of all the connections and the places that poetry allowed me to be. Now, everyone was asking me, or telling me at the time, what jobs I needed to have for my best interest and my protection. No one ever asked if I could dream something big enough that would impact the lives of others. And what I learned is being able to tell the truth to myself spared me the weight of the anxiety of others' expectations, because no one can ever encapsulate or tell you what your full purpose can be. And every time I've had a moment in my life where I noticed some type of trajectory where it raised, it all comes from me doing one simple thing. The one thing that most of us struggle with on a day-to-day basis, simply being able to tell the truth to yourself. So as I close this story on the 61st anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, this Black American who has generations of ancestors who would have been killed for speaking the truth wants to tell you, I cannot iterate how freeing it is to believe in yourself, to speak truth into yourself, and hopefully have an impact on others long beyond our years. Thank you.
Was there a particular event or experience that inspired that poem that you shared tonight?
Actually, yes.
Would you be willing to share?
Sure. The story I literally just shared. So what it is, a lot of times, once I was going through my process and was able to move forward, I started to have more confidence in what it was that I was doing. Again, you tell most people that you're going to be a poet. I heard it for the first 5 years of my career. Great, you're a poet. What's your real job? No, I do poetry, and I probably make more money than you. People didn't like that, but it was true. But the point is, once I finally reached a space where I was comfortable in my own magic, I gave myself permission to write pieces like that to give others access to find that for themselves.
Thank you for starting the story with a poem this evening.
Thank you.
Beautiful. One, two, three. Our third personal story. Ms. Kathy Cano-Murillo, or the Crafty Chica. Some things you need to know about Kathy, the Crafty Chica. Kathy is founder of the award-winning craft and creative site, craftychica.com. She is a former syndicated newspaper columnist and now a full-time creative-preneur, and has authored 12 books, including 2 novels and her bestseller, Forever Frida. Please welcome Kathy, the Crafty Chica.
Took my glasses off so everyone's blurry and I'm not nervous. So July 14th, 2024 was the 15th anniversary of my dad's passing. Every year it's a challenge how I'm going to process the day. This year I decided to channel the one thing he always told me during his last days. He'd say, just remember how fun I was as a dad, how I loved to give you surprises, I made you laugh, play pranks, taught you lessons, shared my wisdom. So I channeled that on that day. I got through the day and I felt good. I didn't cry or anything. I just felt like I was channeling his happy, joyful, surprising energy. The next day is a Monday, 7:30 in the morning. I check my email and my results come in from my 23andMe. Now, I had signed up to get 23andMe because I went to Spain in June and I had an identity crisis of, am I Spanish or am I Mexican? Like, I wanted to know the percentages. So I get the results back and I look at the results. I'm like, okay, cool. I look up, oh, cute, there's a family tree here. Like, let me see if anyone else in my family has sent in their DNA. And I see my cousin, my first cousin, Cecily. You're going to hear a lot of family names in this, just to give you a heads up to take notes. My first cousin, Cecily, she is down as my half-niece. And I'm like, that's weird. That's wrong. Like, she's my first cousin. So I look up more, and I see my mom and my dad. They're married for 50 years. Both of them are in heaven now. And across from my dad, it says, unidentified half-sibling. Like, I have a half-sibling according to this, and my dad has an unidentified partner to the sibling. And I thought, what the heck? Like, okay, my parents were married for 50 years. My dad was a player? Like, no, that is not the life I remember. So my husband is like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I call my little sister, she's 10 years younger, and I'm like, Teresa, I just got my 23andMe results back, and Dad has a secret child out there. Like, we have a half-sibling we don't know about. And she works for the Arizona Historical Society, and she's like, I have a meeting to go to right now. Like, this is a lot of information to tell me before I go into this meeting. And I go, well, I just want to let you know. And this is like 8 in the morning. I had a busy day. And I go, okay, I just want you to know that. She goes, okay, so whatever you do, like, don't start telling everybody. Like, let's honor Dad's legacy. Let's get the facts before we tell anybody. Like, just don't tell anybody. I'm like, okay. So I hang up with her. I call my cousin Cece. So my dad, he has 8 brothers, and some of them have passed on. My Uncle Danny, one of my favorite uncles, Uncle Danny, has passed on. That's Cecily's dad. And then there's my Uncle Joe. He's the keeper of all the family stories and secrets. He's 82. Cece is his daughter. We went to Spain together. So I'm like, Cece, I got my 23andMe results back. My dad has an extra child. And she goes, what? And I go, yes. I go, we have a half sibling out there. And she goes, meet me at my dad's house at 1 o'clock. He will know everything. So my sister calls me. Now we're like maybe around 10 a.m. My sister calls me. Okay, I told my boss, and she knows all about genealogy. She looked at the family tree, and she said, Uncle Danny is really Dad's son. So that means Cecily is our half-niece. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Uncle Danny is really our secret older brother? Is that what you're saying? Because we have an older brother, but this is like a whole new realm, right? A secret older brother who happened to be one of my favorite uncles. And I said, what are we going to do with this? She said, well, don't tell anybody. Like, it's very common, like, back in the 50s, like, that's just what happened. Like, Nana must have just taken in his baby as her own and made him a brother. So I'm like, wow, okay, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm going to Uncle Joe's at 1, and I will ask him. He'll tell us everything. I hang up with her, and my cousin Carrie texts me, hi, Kathy. And I'm like, Carrie. And she's Cecily's sister, so she could be my first cousin or my half-niece. I'm like, are you sitting down? She calls me from New York, and I said, I got my 23andMe, and I think that you might be my dad's granddaughter. Like, I think that Uncle Danny might be my dad's son. And she's like, what? It's just, do you mean my grandmother's not my grandmother? And I go, well, she would be your great-grandmother. In the meantime, my sister is calling me saying, do you think he did it when he worked at the city? And I'm like, no. I go, Dad would not do that to Mom. Like, they were happily married. He was always working. It had to have been before they were married, like when he was a young teenager. So I tell Carrie, I'm like, I will get back with you. I'm getting to the bottom of this. And the time comes, it's like 1 o'clock, I'm supposed to go to my uncle's. Now it's 12:30, and I cannot wait until 1. My uncle just lives a few minutes away, so I get in the car, and I'm driving over, and I have this huge download. I'm crying, sobbing, and I'm like, Dad, I have no judgment. Like, I totally understand if this is what happened and now you've passed and we have this information. I really want to know what the truth is, and I love you, but my one question is, why didn't you pay more attention to your granddaughters, like Cecily and Carrie, like that? But no judgment, no judgment. And then I go on to talking to my Uncle Danny, who after my dad died, my Uncle Danny would come to all of my book signings. I'm here in honor of your dad. He would always show up for me, like the best secret older, what did I say? Older brother that I could have. So I'm like, Uncle Danny, I love you so much, and I'm so happy if this is our truth. Like, no wonder why we always had that connection. I get to my Uncle Joe's house, and I'm like, pull yourself together. So dry off the tears. I'm like, it's all going to be okay. We're going to get to the truth of this. I'm like, I can't wait to tell everybody else in the family. This is so exciting. I go into Uncle Joe's, and he's like, come in, mijito. Yes, come in. You know, I walk by the wall of all the frames of all the family generations, the plants, the ofrendas. I sit down in this comfy couch with all these pillows. The lights are dim, and I pull out my laptop, and I set it on the table, and I open it to 23andMe, and my Uncle Joe's like this. And I'm like, and I go, did Cece tell you why I'm here? And he said, yes, she did. And I go, do you think Uncle Danny is my dad's son? And he goes, absolutely not. Absolute, none of it. No. And I'm like, oh, man. And he said, he goes, for one thing, he goes, I remember my mother being pregnant with Danny, going into labor while she's making tortillas for us and still feeding me and your dad before she went to the hospital to have Danny. He goes, number 2, your father was a child. He was only 14 years old. And number 3, your mother, she was his only one. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, now let's go try my figs from my fig tree. They're so delicious. So we go to the kitchen table, beautiful setup. He slowly walks over, puts this beautiful bowl of figs, and I'm eating the figs. I didn't like figs, but I love these because they're my Uncle Joe's figs, and I love everything about my Uncle Joe. So I eat the figs, and my phone is buzzing because by now there's a group chat going on. Like, everyone wants the update. So I have lunch with my Uncle Joe. My cousin Cece comes over. Her daughter calls my cousin Michael in Washington. Hey, Kathy's here, say hi, you know. So it's all joyful. I get in the car, and I'm like, what just happened? And so I text them, and I said, he said, absolutely not. Like, no, my dad doesn't have an extra child, and no, Uncle Danny is his brother, not his son. And I'm driving home, and I'm thinking, okay, do I believe 23andMe, who's like this official company where you read stories all the time about people finding out about their secret siblings? Or do I believe Uncle Joe, the keeper of the family stories and secrets? Like, was this a bro code that he was taking the secret with him all the way? Because I record my conversations with Uncle Joe, and sometimes he's like, go ahead and record it, and sometimes he's like, don't record this one. So I'm like, okay, what do? I get home. By this time, my daughter has signed into my account, and she's like, at the NASA dashboard, like trying to navigate the whole thing. And she goes, I cannot figure this stuff out. She goes, you need to contact 23andMe and ask them, tell them the situation. So I'm like, it's true. Like, it's 23andMe. Like, this is my DNA. How in the world would they make a mistake? And she's like, just tell them. And I'm thinking about my dad, like, wow, this is so wild. I would never in a million years think that he would do anything. Like, why would he just tell us? So I get on a chat with 23andMe, and the agent takes like 20 minutes, and he comes back, and he said, okay, there's been an error. And yeah, that's my dad, whoever made that. And I said, I'm like typing on the computer this way. I go, what do you mean there's been an error? And he said, you don't have an unidentified half-sibling. And I said, okay, so what you're saying is my dad doesn't have an unidentified partner, there's no extra sibling, and you're wrong, this tree is wrong. And he said, yes, that is correct. So then I saved the text on the screen. It says, well, I just had a meltdown today and interrogated my whole family. How embarrassing. Could you please remove that from my family tree? And he replies, oh, of course, I totally understand. I will delete that right away. And I just had to think, okay, what if I didn't have family to help me cross-reference this or to dig deeper on this? So I text everybody. They're all disappointed. Like, all my cousins are like, oh, man, that was so exciting for a day. This is 7:30 at night now. This is all day that I have been working on this to find out if I have a secret sibling. And at night, we're laughing, my husband's laughing, and he gives me a big hug, and he goes, are you sad your uncle's not your secret older brother? And I'm like, yes, I'm sad. But you know what? I signed up for Ancestry.com. I'm waiting for my DNA results, hopefully soon.
Absolutely delightful, Kathy. Thank you.
You don't even know where to go with this.
So I interpret knowing your family history and lineage is very important to you.
Now it is.
You also
even more
touched,
so.
you shared you record your conversations with your uncle. Can you share a little bit about why you do that and what that looks like?
Well, I share them because they are absolutely the coolest stories I could ever imagine. And they're just so wonderful and detailed that I want to have record of them. I want to have record of my Uncle Joe's storytelling and his inflection in his voice. I was never able to do that with my dad or my grandmother. My grandmother, I would go home and type up everything that happened, but this way I have his voice, I have his story.
Thank you for sharing. That is great advice.
Yes, yes.
So if all of you go home and record your elders,
Yes.
you learn that here. Thank
Yes,
you.
and don't trust 23andMe when it comes to DNA. Double check, double check.
Thank you, Kathy. Another round, please. Traditional story, check. 3 fabulous personal stories, check. We are now entering the question and answer session, so I'm going to invite all 3 of our fabulous storytellers to have a seat on the couch. And while they work their way to the couch, I'm going to have you multitask. 1, think of a question or comment, and then 2, mark your calendars for October 17th. There is another Gather storytelling on October 17th, and the theme is lost. Don't get lost, put it on your calendar. Thank you. No, the other thing I want to share, so I am a student at South Mountain Community College Storytelling Institute. So if you are at all interested in learning more about storytelling or practicing storytelling, 1, you can get a 30-hour credit certificate. I am on the 5-year track, 1 class a semester. Or just take 1 class for fun. So if you're interested in learning or practicing storytelling or just exploring, look up the Storytelling Institute. Additionally, the Storytelling Institute hosts its own local or community storytelling events. So don't get lost. Also mark your calendar on a different day so we're not competing. People and Places, hosted at South Mountain Community College, fact-based stories on September 27th and October 18th. Make it a week, make it a month, make it a week. I hope to see you at these other events. We're going to jump into question and answers. So raise your hand if you have a question, and we will have that mic floating. But I get the first question while you think. Sorry, Stacy. You. Thank you. Kind of want to ask this in a row. Maybe we'll start with Chris. He's closest to me. This is low. All right. I'm only saying the question once, so all 3 of you need to pay attention. I hope I get an answer. You were invited to share your stories this evening. Truth or spare? Did you immediately say yes, and did you immediately know what you wanted to tell? What's shaking, Chris?
Yes, I immediately wanted to do it. Love being able to participate in storytelling events. It's another medium for writers, so to be around amazing storytellers like yourselves is always a learning experience. It's the credits without the credits counting. Some elements, I didn't know exactly what it is I wanted to speak on. I wanted to do a little bit of a play, so instead of truth or spare, it was truth and spare. But yeah, it probably took a couple weeks to get it, but once it was going, it just started to develop, and it's like, duh, this is your life story. Tell that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Parul.
So yes, I did say yes immediately. I mean, who in their right mind would say no to such an amazing opportunity, plus meet such amazing people and storytellers. Of course, I love storytelling. It is one way that I feel connected to people outside of my own network, outside of my own family and friend circle. And I have met some of the most wonderful people in all my storytelling experiences I've had so far. Not as many as Chris, but still. So yes, definitely I said yes. As far as the topic, I was not really sure, but slowly and steadily it came to me.
Thank you, Parul.
Thank you.
Mine was capital letters YES because I got the email around the same time that this was happening, and I took it as a sign from my dad, like, go have fun with this. And I didn't mention this in my story, but this was my dad's prank. This was him reminding me of, like, don't take things so serious.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. You also mentioned you're wearing something special on your hand.
Yes, I have my dad's ring. that I
Excellent.
wear all the time when I do events.
No, thank you for sharing. Do we have an immediate question? I cannot see. Did you point to one, Parul? Okay, we have a question. This is a team effort. No, thank you.
I'm curious how you yourself, or how did this storytelling, do you lead all of them? Or what brought you here to leading this?
Well, thank you. I am a guest host. This is my first. Well, thank you.
You did a great job.
I'll let you know if I get invited back. No. The storytelling community, there's camaraderie. We love each other. We're different, but we love each other. And just, I think, like all three of my colleagues to the right, if you're asked, you absolutely say yes to be part of this wonderful experience. So yes.
I was going to say, I taught English in California high school, and our library was clearing out all the old VHS tapes, and so laying on a table, there was this storytelling tape, and I had never heard of that, and absolutely fell in love with it. So they had 3, and then I went online and got the 4th. So, and it's put out by the American Storytelling Association or something, that's really big back in the Midwest, and they perform under tents. And so I shared it with my students, and I just fell in love with the whole concept.
Thank you. Storytelling is a discipline. And so if you're interested, I'm going to make that plug again. South Mountain Community College Storytelling Institute.
And it was actually Dinah Dinshaw who's here tonight, also past guest host of this program, and she's been on the program to tell a personal story. Bryce was a personal recommendation from Dinah.
Well,
so thank you,
you,
Dinah, and thank you for being here tonight.
Are there any other questions? I see a hand. Ms. Dinah Dinshaw.
This question is for Christopher. What did you do with those 7,000 tickets?
I sold them. No, actually, no. What I did is I've always been a fan of basketball. Period. My father was a coach. He coached myself and my sister, and so I never understood the stupidity, for lack of a better term, for people who try to degrade or denigrate women's sports. Period. Like the T-shirts say, everybody watches women's sports, and most of the people that complain about it can't beat them anyway. I wanted to do something that would have an impact, so I gifted 54 girls basketball teams in Maricopa County and their families tickets to the game, and the rest I sold for no more than $5 a pop, so that the community could be introduced to the sport, see the high level of it, but also be able to take your family out for not a lot and give your kids an experience they never had. And so as a result of that day, it was May 2019, it was a home opener. It was the 6th largest home attendance crowd in Mercury history at the time, and I think it's still top 10.
Keep those hands popping up. Stacy will get the mic. Parul, in your consulting work, you've helped many authors or aspiring authors to reach audiences. Do you have any tips or points that you'd be willing to share for those who may want to get their work seen?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have some wonderful authors here as well. I would say that definitely, even though I was bashing them in my story here, but don't stop yourself from writing, and find your supportive team, because writing as storytelling or any such arts that we pursue can be a very lonely journey. So have your own supportive team of cheerleaders and people who can guide you, who can coach you, I mean, when it comes to writing, have a good editor, have a good cover designer, have a good person who could give you, my biggest cheerleader, my biggest supporter is Pepper back there. She's one who recommended me for this talk as well. She's a wonderful editor, wonderful journalist, and every time I'm in doubt, I always reach out to her or other people. So, basically, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Wonderful. Thank you. Stacy, we have a hand.
I just had a question about your dad. Like, what traits do you feel like you inherited from him, or like how are you similar to your dad, and then how are you different from your dad?
Definitely his work ethic. He worked for the city as a civil engineer. I always want to know, what does an engineer do? Because all our families are like, that's what they want us to do. But he was a civil engineer, and then he would fix cars in the garage. He would fix cameras. So I'm the same way, where I always like to be working on something. His sense of storytelling. But the biggest thing I found out after he passed away was he really wanted to be an adventurer, to go travel the world. He went to Germany for a while early on. He won this car carving contest, and they sent him to Chicago. He did all these things when he was younger, but once he became a husband and a dad, he stopped all of it and just focused on our family. So every time I take a risk and do something scary, I wear his ring, because I'm like, I'm carrying on what you thought you had to give up. And I appreciate everything he did to bring me to this point. And I think the way that we're different is that he looked at family life as like you sacrifice everything for your family. And I look at it more like I want to show my family, my kids, what is possible if we pay attention to our own dreams as parents and our kids' dreams, and help each of us find our own path to happiness, and we can do that together. So I feel like that's where I'm different. Like I took what I learned from him and took it to another level. Hopefully.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, so this is a question I'd invite all of the speakers to, Bryce included. In some of these stories, there's a conflation between finding truth and finding your voice, right? And it's true to various extents. But there's also a little bit of cultural overthrow involved. And so I'm curious about how the process and the maturation of finding your voice and kind of choosing truth, if you like, impacts your relationship to your culture today, or your perspective on your culture today.
Chris, can we have you start?
Sure. So, I think that just from a cultural historical context, you cannot not have an impact as far as speaking. So our truths are our lived experiences, and that can evolve over time. So it's important to have a strong foundation and an understanding of that past, to be able to have any sense of growth beyond where you're at. So what has your community or your culture come through, and where are you going? What things are true? What are things that are holding people back? What are some ideologies, like fear, for example, being one of them? If you've grown up in a culture where historically you've been afraid to take the leap and do something, and you reach a point where you do something that's foreign to others, with time and with distance, you can see where those threads may tie in, and some people will refer to it as generational curses, and over time those things will become broken. My grandfather didn't even finish the 3rd grade because he had to take care of his family, sharecropping. So to be in a space where he's doing that, when I was in 3rd grade, I was Aesop in the Old Man Aesop play for elementary school. So to even have the ideal of just the lived experiences by the time he was 18 and by the time I was 18, have a point as far as a trajectory, as far as where I would go. But that is set up because of my culture and because of the community I grew up in, working to actually build something better for the next generation. I am a product of those who came before me, who believed in me, and again, I'm living out their wildest dreams.
Thank you, Chris. Parul, do you have anything to add, or?
Sure. I believe, personally for me, if I speak my truth and if I'm true to myself, I'm empowering the other person as well to speak their own truth. It's like, having this open conversations. And yes, they are uncomfortable in the beginning, But what I've experienced is your bond becomes way more stronger with that person. Because there is no veil in between. They can see your truth, you can see their truth, and there's nothing to hide really. So you're just empowering the other person by empowering yourself.
Thank you. Kathy.
I think it's important we all have our own individual perspective of how things happen. And I think the more that we can document that, the more of a gift it is for those who, because now I'm thinking of, my future, my grandkids, great-grandkids. I want to have juicy stories for them to tell about me, because the same way I look at legacy of my grandparents and great-grandparents, my dad, I want to be able to leave them some good stuff, to be able to share about me, to inspire them, to have their own stories, for them to get a question asked like, so how are you different from your Nana Chica? Because that's my grandma named Nana Chica. How are you different from her? How are you like her? I love that question, and I hope someday a future grandchild gets asked that about me.
Thank you, Kathy. Do we have other hands? Yes, we do.
Oh, I can be loud. I just have a question for Chris. If you can repeat the line from your poem about bliss. Ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance can be bliss if you use it to allow blissful things to occur.
Oh, sorry. He's going to repeat the line from his poem, Ignorance is bliss.
Oh, yeah. Ignorance can be bliss if you use it to allow blissful things to occur. So if you can eliminate your the noises from the outside noises, it's bad enough dealing with the voices we have in our own heads as artists. I'm sure we can all attest to that. But to eliminate the noise. When I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, I learned why horses wear blinders during the races. Are you guys familiar with that? For those who may not know, the horses wear blinders so that they can focus on their lane, on their race, on the finish line. If the horses didn't have them on, they'd run into each other, break each other's legs. They'd, long story short, be glued by the end of the day. But if you're able to focus on what you are built for, and again, to the point, no one can tell you. They can offer suggestions and offer lived experiences and offer advice, but no one can tell you who you are. And if you have that belief and you build that up over time, that resonates and it shows and it exudes around others, and you give other people permission to follow and focus on their own paths as well. So that's thank you for paying attention to that line. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Great question. Sir, did you have a question as well?
Yes, and this may be stepping a little too close to some traditions, but for Parul, something that a lot of people don't know is that Jews and traditional Hindus share a ritual that's fairly ubiquitous in traditional cultures across the Middle East, which is the observed consummation of the wedding. Now, in modern Jewry, for those who do it, the couple just goes off, smooches a little bit, eats something because you traditionally fast, and it's not really the old ritual. But as you had this very sort of traditional thing, did you have to go through such a thing?
So there were rituals that we had to follow, definitely, and because my wedding was so traditional, we definitely followed all the rituals. We didn't even have time to meet outside of our parents, being there, presence, before the wedding. So it was only after the wedding and after all the rituals were done that we actually got to know each other, for lack of a better term. Thank you.
So storytelling, in my mind, is about connection. There are fundamental or universal human experiences. We know love, we know hate. We all have the brothers or the sisters or the cousins that you say, keep it a secret, and 5 minutes later, it's to the next one. So I invite any of you in the audience, if you don't have a question, did any of the stories spark a memory for you? And which story and what memory? Feel free to share. Kathy, you mentioned you have a mission. Promoting positivity through creativity. Can you talk a little bit how storytelling helps achieve that mission?
Oh, definitely. I think that everything we do from a creative sense comes from an experience that we had. we like this story, I was so shaken up about it. It made such an impact that I felt like I needed to get it out and share it with people. When you feel compelled to write in your journal, it's because you have something to say. When you want to paint something and buy craft supplies, it's because you want to make a mark on the world. It's your subconscious crying to leave a mark and do something positive, that you were here. And so what I try to do through Crafty Chica is offer all kinds of pathways to find the craft that works best for you. Because if you take time to nurture your creative spirit, you will be happier. It will calm your spirit. There's even scientific studies about this. It helps relax you. It helps calm your mind. You just got to find the right one that works best for you. And I will, like I say, spreading the gospel of glitter, metaphorical glitter if you don't like the literal sparkly stuff, but just taking time to honor that in yourself. We are all creative in some way. And I get so triggered when I hear people say, I don't have a creative bone in my body. I'm like, well, your creative bone is sad, because it's like, I'm right here. Like, pay attention to me. I need love too. So just, yes, honor the creative bone in your body.
Beautiful, Kathy. You can never have too much glitter. We have time for either one memory or one more question. And that summons the courage.
Thanks. This has been really wonderful. I have a question for you, Chris. You mentioned about Culture Hub, or maybe you did, Bryce. But yeah, I wanted to see if you could share more about that. I work in downtown Phoenix. I'm in the office maybe once a week, every couple of weeks, usually at home.
Sweet.
And I think I'm walking by a Culture Hub storefront at the Arizona Center. Is that you guys?
No, actually, I'm on Grand Avenue.
Oh, okay.
So right next to the Be Kind People Project Youth Development Center, great nonprofit, focuses on anti-bullying. We actually were neighbors in a previous space before we moved to this spot where we're at now. So the idea behind Culture Hub, I call it a revolution disguised as a co-working space. Co-working has been around for a while. You guys are probably familiar with Cahoots. Shout out to Jenny and Odine. They were actually two of the first people who spoke to me to help me out with my co-working space. I wanted to have a safe space that was intentionally designed for Black and brown people to feel safe. Not to exclude anyone, but for the simple fact that if there are spaces where Black and brown people are at, typically everyone feels safe. They're having to worry about code switching or being who you are, worrying about the comfort level of other people instead of worrying about yourself is a main priority that a lot of people, want to get away from. There are people who are offended that you can be proud to have a space and call it Black-owned, not knowing the history of Black-owned businesses being attacked and intimidated just for existing. And everybody just wants to exist. Quick tie-in to what we've been talking about. What makes storytelling so beautiful is the commonalities that we all find through it. We all have so much that we can attribute to more alike than not alike. And when you break down those walls as a society and as a community, you start to truly see the power. The school that I went to growing up in elementary school, I had a Hispanic teacher with a PhD in kindergarten. There were 4 kids named Chris, and I was never referred to as the Black one. So to have a space where we can all be seen and all learn from each other and grow from the beauty that is in our cultures, it makes things so much better. Culture Hub is a space that protects and allows that to happen. Anyone can come in. On the door, it says no egos allowed, so that everyone understands as soon as your feet are in the door, your magic has already been validated. You have nothing to prove for anyone. It's a space that allows ignorance, because a lot of times people may have questions culturally that they're afraid to ask for fear of being vilified. If you don't know, you don't know. How are you going to find out? So to have a space where everyone is welcome, everyone can come to here, and we can all work together to build something successful. If you're working on your business and there are resources that someone else may have, there's no gatekeeping in the space. Everyone who is there, as the kids like to say, understand the assignment. So all are welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
Can I share one tip?
Of course.
I just thought of, if you have an iPhone, there is an app, the Journal app. It comes on all of the phones. use that. It is the easiest way to just document what happened to you during the day or how you feel about something. You can throw a picture in there. No one's going to read it but you. It's so easy to use. So if you feel that is like a baby step you can take towards starting to get your story out of you, is just document the best thing that happened to you today. Go in and just do a voice memo. It does, text or speech to text. And then you can look back on them at the end of the month, and it's so fun to look at all the cool things that you did.
Thank you, Kathy. Chris, if folks want to learn more about you or Culture Hub, is there a website or do we Google Culture Hub?
Actually, just go to www.culturehubphx.com. You can also follow my work as an artist, www.truththeletterbtold.net. Between those two, you can pretty much find anything about us.
Excellent. Parul.
Yeah, that's just my name, parulagrawal.com.
Excellent. Kathy.
CraftyChica.com.
Crafty Chica. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of our hearts, for being here making this connection possible. Thank you to the ASU Care Center. I hope to see you all on October 17th for Lost. Check out the ASU Care website for plenty of other events happening right in this room. Thank you all. It's been a privilege. Thank you for connecting.